G'day there, it's Dave here, Dave Mells, and I'm so excited to bring you this video, and I'm very impressed if you actually have gotten this far. And now, looking at this position here, it appears quite balanced. It appears that it's quite balanced, and but it's actually in a position where black can be destroyed very quickly, and part of the problem is because one side has more pieces in the center than the other side, and has more center focus than the other side, and that central control is actually devastating. And so this running game through the center here is where neither side has a pawn in the center, and the pieces are very, very centralized, and what's happened is black hasn't sensed the danger through the center, and it's all because of, well, there's two non-contact forces. Obviously the king is drawing everything towards it, and it might appear strong, but it's not. And secondly, it's the fact is there's a minor center of gravity. The bishop on d6 is loose, and so the bishop on d6 is loose, and there's a bishop pointing at the king. Now you might think, oh well, there's obstacles, but how many pieces? Let's do a numbers evaluation, and a numbers matchup. So the knight, the bishop, and the rook are all hitting at e6. Okay, so that's 3 pieces attacking, and there's only 1 piece defending, and that is the pawn on f7. So in this position here, it's white to move, has that advantage of tempo, and so once you actually see you have a massive numbers advantage, okay, so like let's put it this way, that pawn on e6 is being defended by the value of 1, let's count, okay, by pawn 1, and you have the imbalance of a bishop, which is 3.5, and a knight, that's 6.5, and a rook, which is 5, okay, and so whenever you see an imbalance like that, a numbers imbalance like that, you've got to be looking seriously at rook takes pawn, knight takes pawn, and bishop takes pawn. That is the most, the move that's going to give you the most momentum for your pieces, and the fact is the opponent hasn't finished development, and also the fact is the opponent hasn't, it has that loose piece at d6, and so we see that the matchup, the numbers matchup favors white, and we also see black hasn't. Now white is 1 move away from finishing development, just like black. The knight will move to a6 or d7, and white will have the bishop. Now the thing about this bishop at c1 is by holding it back, you can find the best place for it, and also you can control. You're from that seat, I call it the Caesar, it's in meditation, it's still attacking 2 of their squares, so in their half of the board, so it's actually, it does have some activity, so it does have some momentum, and it also is in controlling some important center squares at e3 and at particularly f4. f4 is a very good strike point for your opponent, like say knight h5, knight f4, very, very important strike point. So this bishop at d6 is loose, it's a weakness. Also you have the matchup, so immediately when you have that advantage, you've got to be looking to bust through. You've got to actually accelerate your position, okay? And that's actually type 5 here as well. Like, you've got to be willing to look at things which appear bold and rash. Even it seems rash to play a piece taking the pawn, recapture. Like even a knight is more valuable than 2 pawns. But remember, it's also the fact is the light square bishop at c4 is pointed at the king at g8. So that misalignment, misplaced piece is another weakness, and it is a major gravity. So you're giving up a knight for 2 center pawns, but you're getting significant activity. Okay, you're opening up that diagonal. It just makes sense. It just makes sense. So obviously, you want to, when you have a numbers matchup, you look from capturing from least value to most value. You will also look for in-between moves. Can the opponent say play queen to e5 and threaten mate with this maximum momentum? No, so it can't. And when there's no knight at f3, you want the queen in front of the bishop, not the other way around generally. So in this case here, so you start with the least value, and the least value is the knight. The knight's valued at 3 currently. So knight takes e6, f takes e6. Now you could just try to not capture the knight, and you've got to consider that the opponent won't capture the knight. Might actually play, say, rook to e8. Rook to e8. Fair enough, fair play. Okay, and now the knight can perhaps move to f4 and threaten to break up the bishop pair. And because you've already weakened the light squares, why not get rid of the light square bishop? And if bishop takes the knight at f4, you've got the bishop recapturing. But just in general, don't always assume the black will play into it and you'll just come away with a free pawn. But let's just say f does take recaptures the knight. Now, do you play the bishop in? Okay, this is for maximum activity. Do you play the bishop in check? All right, you've accelerated the bishop. Check. Their bishop can pull back. Or do you capture with the rook? And the answer is very, very simple. Now, it's not just barrages where pieces are trying to park the car in the garage, if you know what I mean, barraging down along the linear momentum. It's also batteries, and we actually increases the momentum, and in fact, it creates potential energy. Okay, just like the water at the top of a waterfall has a lot of potential, and it becomes kinetic when it's falling and it's moving. So the fact is that instead of capturing with the bishop for a cheap check, you've actually, which would be kinetic, you actually switch to potential. You actually recapture the f pawn with a rook. And what's happening is you actually got a battery, a discovered check. The rook can capture that bishop, lose bishop at d6, and check. So say black, you see a check, break the check. So the bishop plays back to f7. And now you can just safely capture the bishop with your rook, and the difference between you and your opponent is very, very stark. Obviously, if they play bishop takes bishop, your pawn can recapture, and you're in this situation where you've won material, and you're actually ready to win the game. Really, is what I would like to say. Now that you're up in material, and that's all I can really say about that. So obviously, the torque on the position, how much torque you have. The knight at d4 has torque on 2 pawns. It has the center pawn and it has the c pawn, but also, which is a terrible square now, looking now. And also, I think that the knight to d4 harassed the bishop at f4. So, I mean, that's just my logical deduction. And the bishop, and instead of just leaving the bishop at f4, they retreated and developing another piece, they retreated the bishop, and that's what gave the opportunity to come crashing through. There wasn't another defender at e6. But who knows? But we can always speculate and make deductions. That's fun. So now I spoke about points of application. That is like a That's the technical side of things, as opposed to, you know, numbers and value matchup. And we can just see how it's just won the game for white by having, you know, duration on a target on at e6, and that just so those resultant forces, the linear with the bishop and rook, and angular with the knight, just is the velocity, and it's just too hard to deal with. And creating batteries can be just as important as creating barrages. So use these engines of all these batteries and barrages, and look for misalignments like the king in line with the bishop, and look at how the queen is on a5 is quite part of the Lonely Hearts Club. She's not doing anything over there. In fact, she's in a way abandoned that bishop. The bishop wouldn't be vulnerable without her trying to play before the development is finished, and keeping a grip. And it does come down to keeping a grip on the center and developing, and not letting an imbalance of forces, as we see in this case, occur. So this just shows you the value of playing in the center, and it can just lead to just so many victories. Alright, and that knight on d4 definitely was a lever that turned the position into white's favor. It definitely leveraged that, you know, the position. It was the linchpin. It's the piece that, you know, one piece to sacrifice, two pieces to bust through, mate, win. It's you know, it's the rule of three. And anyway, so there you have it. And take care. And may the force be with you, and I mean by that the forcey pieces. And all right, take care. Bye.